Hey everyone, welcome back to House to House, our Bridge Church podcast. We are so excited to have you guys here. I am Ben, your host, and as always, we have Vince. Vince, how are we doing?
Great. Happy to be here, episode 4.
Episode 4. This is episode 4.
Today is the day.
Yes.
Today is the day you have made.
If you haven't watched this before, why we're here, what we're doing, basically, this is just an opportunity for us to go a little bit deeper. We're going to cover some stuff that we would not always cover on a Sunday morning, not because it's not important, but it just doesn't always fit in a 35-minute message. And so here we have the freedom to go as long or as short as we want and to go in depth as we want, and just a way for you guys to get a little deeper.
Yes. I'm goofy today.
I guess you are.
Last one got a little fewer views, so I got to really spice up the beginning of this one.
Maybe.
Sing a little bit.
Or
do something gimmicky.
Yes.
Right.
Options.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
If we get to a certain views or comments, maybe we'll do something crazy.
Do it for the content.
When we get to 2,000 views.
Yeah. No, of anything, this is... maybe more than anything we do, this really isn't about the numbers at all. Mm-mm. This is about providing a resource for people who are ready to take maybe some steps that not everybody would be ready to do on a Sunday morning. Learn about some things that might not make sense to be taught day one of somebody following Jesus. So, yeah, we're talking about some deeper things, some more complicated things, some more theological things. And that's the purpose of it. And we've gotten great feedback so far.
Really
which
good
is
feedback.
Great.
So thank you for the feedback. Please tell us what you like, what you don't like. Comment below if you have more ideas, because we get all of our ideas from you guys, whether it's through emails over the years that have been common for Vince, which is a big reason for our last episode, if you haven't watched that already. But our other topics were specifically based on comments. So we love your guys' feedback. So please subscribe, comment, and we are on Spotify. I think we're on Apple Podcasts too.
We're on Apple. We're on Spotify. We got video and audio on Spotify. Mm-hmm. The very cutting edge podcast on Spotify have the video also. Those not just audio on Spotify. It's video on Spotify.
Okay, perfect. What are we going to talk about today, Vince?
Okay, this is what I planned.
Okay,
I'm going to move my finger along a spectrum.
Okay,
as I say things, and then you'll see what I'm doing.
Oh, sure.
Okay, ready?
Okay.
Satanic worship, mediums, spiritists, astrology, tarot cards, crystals, energy healing, spirit guides, yoga, the Enneagram, Halloween, Harry Potter, Christmas.
You
see where I'm doing with that?
I think I understand.
A spectrum.
Yes.
A spectrum of things, and there are Christians who would say everything on that spectrum forbidden. Mm-hmm. And there are Christians who would say almost everything on that spectrum is allowed. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Let me just kind of zoom through one more time. Mediums, astrology, tarot cards, crystal healing. Reiki should be on here as well.
Yep.
Yoga. Mm-hmm. This is where we get a little more like, wait, how do we feel about yoga? Yep. Is yoga in or is yoga out?
Yep.
Enneagram, we start to tip to most people being like, I think that's fine. But then a few people are like, wait a minute.
Yep.
Halloween, again, 80-90% of Christians are like, it's fine. Yep. And then 10% are like, whoa. Harry Potter, that one's evolved. Yep. At one point, that was further on the forbidden side.
Over. Yes.
But now it's moved to the more allowed side. And then Christmas, I grew up in a household where at one point we stopped celebrating Christmas because it had pagan occultic origins, supposedly, even though it's celebrating the birth of Jesus.
Yeah.
Now, but it was apparently at one point mixed with a pagan or Roman holiday worshiping a false god. So this is a spectrum, and it's one that people don't always know how to think about, what to do about it. So that was my idea for the intro.
That makes a lot of sense to me. It is a very large spectrum where there's a lot of differing opinions on all of them.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about most of them today.
Yeah.
And explain why you might lean one way or the other, or why we might lean one way or the other on most of them. So Let's jump into it. Where should we? What's the best way to start? Is the best place to start with just like a basis in general from Scripture about how we should handle anything that's non-spiritual from God, or just take it topic?
We probably don't have time to hit each one individually. Maybe we'll have time to hit some of them individually, but I think that's a great place to start.
Okay.
How do we think about this whole spirituality thing in general? So let's start with the basic theology. So I actually didn't write this verse down. I think it is Ephesians 1. Someone's going to fact check me on that, as they should. But it's where Paul says our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers in the heavenly realm, or against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realm. I'm messing up the quote.
Yeah.
But basically saying that human beings are in a struggle in the spiritual world between the forces of God and the forces of Satan. So we can't always see that around us, but it is happening all around us. There is a battle in the spiritual world. In the book of Daniel, Daniel calls on God's help, and I believe it is Michael, I think it's Michael, the archangel, who shows up and said, I was detained on my way here fighting the prince of Persia, which was like another demon. It's a crazy story. Not that the angel is a demon, obviously, but there's literally a battle that detained him on his way to Daniel and Daniel's prayer. So that's sort of a foundational truth to know, is that in the spiritual world, there is no neutral ground. So everything around us that claims to have spiritual power is either from God or from Satan or making it up, right?
What do you mean by making it up? Sorry.
Like, it's not actually any spiritual power. It's just a gimmick.
Okay.
Or it's just a lie. It's some person pretending to be a fortune teller, but there's no actual power.
Okay.
But if there is any actual power, it is either from God or from Satan.
Gotcha.
It's fairly common in at the Bridge, and probably a lot of churches, but especially at the Bridge, that people will show up, they'll start attending, they will maybe get saved, they'll get baptized, but they actually, in this day and age, there's a lot of people with some spirituality, spiritual practices from before Jesus that may not be just false. There may actually be a category in the Bible for the spiritual practice they're doing, and it's not from God.
Yeah.
It's not from Jesus. It's not from the Father. It's from the dark side.
Yeah,
we can talk about some of the.
I have a little, just an example of that,
go.
to be like, this is not. I'm in that boat too. I was already a believer. I was just looking for some relief from some pain, and so I saw a massage therapist who specifically practiced Reiki. Reiki is, I don't know for sure how to describe it, but it's
something spiritual.
It's a belief to get the energy, universal energy from the force. Like, it's almost like the force. It's weird. It's
very Star Wars.
Everything flows through all living things, which is actually very Star Wars. It's kind of weird. And if they place your hands on your body correctly, they can channel that force to have some sort of spiritual healing. And it's based off of which I had no idea. I went to go get a massage, and I was like, he said a word that I didn't understand, and I was like, Reiki, that's okay. Like, it's a way of doing a massage therapy, like
that's
a massage therapy
was.
Session. I was like, oh, it's Eastern belief they talked about, where it's like, this is how they massage, and their patients have seen lots of relief from that. And I'm like, that's great. Okay, I will try that. If that works, that works. That's amazing. But, during the massage, I was like, this is weird. Like, I think probably because I do have a relationship with God and the Spirit lives inside of me, that I felt odd. It felt weird. It felt like, this doesn't feel right. I'm currently sitting without clothes on a massage table, of course, with a sheet covering me, like always. But
there's a sheet involved.
Yes, but I mean, like, so I'm kind of stuck. But I mean, but it was odd. It felt not right. It didn't feel good. It felt wrong when I was doing it, and I didn't know. And then later looked it up and was like, oh, this definitely came from some Buddhists, just, I think the word is Shintoism. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
No, I don't
know.
I'm not familiar.
But a couple weird religions that are definitely not Christian.
100%. Yeah, it's sometimes we just find ourselves in a situation like that, and we have to wrestle with, what do I do now that I realize, that there's something happening outside of, sort of Christianity. But yeah, I think great example. And I think one thing to sort of just highlight or double click on, as they say, is that sometimes I think as Christians we think, if it's not the Holy Spirit or if it's not Christianity, it's all fake. And the reality is it's not always all fake. There is actual ways of accessing sort of the demonic spirituality, and the Bible talks about that reality. So in Deuteronomy 18, this is early before Jesus. I'll just read through a couple verses very quickly. It says, there shall not be found among you anyone who burns his son or his daughter as an offering. That's a fairly obvious commandment. Then it goes on to say, anyone who practices divination or tells fortunes or interprets omens or is a sorcerer.
Yes.
Now, again, we might read that and go, well, the Bible must be talking about people who pretend to be sorcerers, pretend to have some kind of mystical power. But the reality is, it's not what it's saying. It's talking about actual demonic or satanic power. We see this when Saul, the king before David, is really in a tight spot. He's lost everything. You know the story?
Yeah, a little bit.
He's disobeyed God. He knows that God's blessing has been removed from him, and he consults a medium.
Yes.
A sort of spiritist type person. Saul disguised himself, putting on other clothes, and at night, I should have written down the reference. This is 1st or 2nd Samuel, I can't remember. Disguised himself, putting on other clothes, and at night he and 2 men went to the woman, this medium, and said, consult a spirit for me, he said, and bring up for me the one I name. But the woman said to him, surely you know what Saul has done. He has cut off the mediums and spiritists from the land. Don't try to trick me into doing some hocus pocus thing for you, because I know that's not allowed. She doesn't realize she's talking to Saul himself. Why have you set a trap for me to bring about my death? And Saul swore to her by the Lord and says, as surely as the Lord lives, you will not be punished for this. Then the woman said, who shall I bring up to you? And he said, bring up Samuel, who's now died. And then it says, when the woman saw Samuel, she cried out at the top of her voice and said to Saul, why have you deceived me? You are Saul. She realizes it's Saul somehow. The king said to her, don't be afraid. What do you see? The woman said, I see a ghostly figure coming up out of the earth. What does he look like? Saul says. And she says, an old man wearing a robe is coming up. Then Saul, this is the biblical text, then Saul knew it was Samuel and bowed down and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. And then it says, Samuel said to Saul, why have you disturbed me by bringing me up? So this is like,
I didn't know that part. I did not know that.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Now maybe some would say, even though the biblical text says Samuel said to Saul, that what the text means is that it was a demon masquerading as Samuel, feels like a little bit of a stretch to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it literally says Samuel said to Saul. So like, I've had friends say, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus. It's actually a true story. But I go to a medium, and the medium tells me what my relatives are saying from the other side. And they're like, and some of what the medium will say that my relatives are saying is secret things that only my relative, my passed away, my dead relative would know. The medium couldn't know it. And so it must be good. It's so comforting to me to know that she's really communicating to me on their behalf.
Yeah.
And she's like, it can't be, this is a real conversation. It can't be bad if it works. And this is a biblical passage to say, it may be working on some weird level that does not make it good. It is still forbidden. There are very clear biblical verses that say that there is some kind of dark powers connected to Satan that can do some weird things, and those are not from God. Those are forbidden. Leviticus 19:31, do not turn to mediums or necromancers. Do not seek them out. So make yourselves unclean. This is all Old Testament first. If a medium turns to mediums, or if a person turns to mediums and necromancers, whoring after them, says the text, I will set my face against that person. Isaiah 18:19. when they say to you, inquire of the mediums and necromancers who chirp and mutter, should not a people inquire of their God instead? 1 Samuel 15, for rebellion is as the sin of divination and presumption as iniquity and idolatry. I'll read just a couple more really quick. Acts 19, a number of those who had practiced magic arts after they get saved, brought their books together and burned them in the sight of all. Galatians 5:19-21. Yep. Now the works of the flesh, this is bad, the works of the flesh are evident. Sexual immorality, and then that same list is idolatry and sorcery.
Yes, witchcraft.
Witchcraft, yes. So all that to say, just because it works doesn't mean, or just because there seems to be a power there, does not mean the Bible is cool with it, or God is cool with it, or you should pursue it. There is a battle between good and evil, between the forces of God and the forces of Satan, and there's no neutral ground. So if it is not claiming to be from Jesus, but it is claiming some kind of power, or even if it is claiming to be from Jesus, some of the time we have to discern there. But especially if it's claiming, I have a spiritual power, but I'm not a Christian, I don't claim that Jesus is Lord, you run from those things, even if they seem to be quote unquote working. That's kind of the farther end of the spectrum.
No, that makes sense.
Thoughts on that? Questions on that?
I lost it actually. So I'm happy you said the New Testament stuff too, because I think a lot of people might say, well, that was the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Like things changed in the New Testament.
Yeah.
Like so that's important. This is not just we're not just talking Deuteronomy. We're not just talking to Leviticus. We're not just talking 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel. Like there are passages in the New Testament that also warn us not to do this.
Yes.
So that's important. I think just because it feels good doesn't mean we should do something, right?
Yes.
Just because.
Yes, or if there seems to be power.
Or there seems to be power in it, doesn't mean we should do it. I think there's lots of weird, normal sins that we always talk about. Sexual sin, just because it feels good doesn't mean we should do it.
Yeah. Right.
And so in the same way, if it feels good to maybe have someone tell you something about your past that only someone might know, and that feels comforting, that doesn't mean it's right.
100%.
And I think that's important. Or just because it feels like you had some sort of energy build inside of you and you feel in less pain. Or
Yeah. So I would say 100%. Yeah. It doesn't mean it was right. So things like astrology, tarot cards, crystals, Reiki, that sort of thing that claims to be directly accessing some kind of power, but isn't Christian, that's all not allowed. And I don't know of any pastors that would have any debate on that. So for the listener wondering, is the Bridge like more conservative than most churches? And this is maybe the first church you've been a part of, and you're like, are they like really weird and strict? No. Any Christian Bible-believing church will say spiritual practices that are claiming spiritual power and are not Christian are all off the table. And there may be real power there, but it is not from God. It's from the other side.
Yeah, you're in all of those cases, for those specific ones on that side of the spectrum, you're relying on spiritual power not from God.
Yeah.
I think it's 1 Corinthians 10:21, you cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons too.
There it is. One cup at a time, people. And one cup only.
Just one cup only, too.
Not at a time. Not at a time.
Oh, so funny. Yeah. So it can work, but it's not going to last. It's not going to. Yeah, it's just not good. It's just not right. I don't know how to say to say it. I don't know.
Yeah. Some of the mission trips I've been on, and you've probably heard about this too, like Overland. There's a mission organization called Overland. We both have friends who work for them, friends who have been on trips. I've been on an Overland trip. I would disagree with some of the things Overland believes theologically, but they're Bible-believing and Christ-following and a really godly organization. And when they go into a lot of regions that are far from God, or a lot of times there's like kinds of Christianity mixed with local kind of pagan religion.
Yes.
And it's typical that there are witch doctors who will do some spells, various things, and people will feel better for a time, and then it gets worse. Then they go back to the witch doctor to pay him more. And it's an endless cycle. And one theory is that it's a demonic thing. They're not pretending to be witch doctors. There is some kind of demonic thing going on that's keeping those people in pain and bondage and keeping those mediums or witch doctors, with money coming in.
Money and power.
Money and power, yeah.
Yeah. So that's a really big deal. I actually, it makes me think of, what was it early in the Bible where God says, don't intermingle with this group of people. I don't remember.
Going into the promised land, probably. The different Canaanite tribes.
Yeah, and then they do, and they're like, hey, cut off from them, because what happens is they end up mixing the God of the Bible with these other groups, and they kind of mix them together, and it kind of gets lost.
Yes.
And early in the Old Testament, God's like, just separate from them. Don't even if they were part of your group at some point, part of the Israelites, now they're mixed in. We can't have it mixed in, because when it gets mixed in, it starts to deteriorate what is true and what's not true. And you can't, it's not meant to be mixed in.
It's not meant to be mixed in, 100%. Yeah, that's great. Should we go to the other end? The other end of the spectrum?
Yeah.
Because that's the other kind of easy end?
Yeah, I think so. I think this side is, I think the point is it is very dangerous.
Yeah.
And I don't know how else to say it, I guess. It's just dangerous. It's not, it will deceive you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Not allowed, forbidden, and not because of any other reason than it's not good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it might have worked for a short time, or it might have helped you in a certain time of your life, or you felt like it helped you in a certain time of your life, and it could have given you, like we talked about. But everything we see from the Bible, it tells us, do not do this, because it is harming you in ways you do not know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay. Other end, which the other end is also fairly black and white. Meaning and I'm not just talking about Christmas. I think that was the last thing I said on that spectrum was Christmas. I don't just mean Christmas. But I mean, on the other end, we can get into a place where we are sort of live in a mindset where we have to be completely removed from anything that may have any kind of negative or ungodly or demonic spirituality attached to it. Meaning not just that we don't participate, but that we come nowhere near it. And it is almost like a radioactive material. It's like if you're in the presence of that sort of thing, you have to be nervous because it can kind of jump out and grab you. And that is actually also not biblical. That we as believers, we have the Holy Spirit in us. We have a certain amount of spiritual authority from God. And so we don't want to participate in those things, but we also don't need to worry about them kind of jumping from the shadows and taking control because we're just in proximity. So,
Go ahead.
Yeah. So like one of the common things at the time the Bible is written is that when you went to go buy food, that food often, especially the meat, had been sort of in its packaging process, it had been sacrificed to a pagan god. It had been sacrificed to a demon, potentially a real demon. And so all these Christians were like, if we go eat this food, we are participating in a pagan ritual. Now, they weren't intending to participate in a pagan ritual, but that was the fear.
Yeah.
We are like literally partaking in a demonic ritual because they're saying, hey, we sacrifice to an idol, now you eat it and you'll be a part of it. And Paul makes it really clear that he goes, you don't have to worry about that. He says, eat anything sold in the meat market without raising questions of conscience. For the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. They may have intended to sacrifice it to a demon, but you're not intending to sacrifice for it to a demon, and you have power. And you don't need to worry about it. If your heart is not in it, it can't get you. He goes on to say, if an unbeliever invites you to a meal and you want to go, eat whatever is put before you without raising questions of conscience. So one of the applications of this is like, if I am hanging out with a non-Christian and they have occultic stuff everywhere in their house, I don't care. I've got the Holy Spirit in me. It's not going to come get me. I have the power and authority of Jesus, not because of any good thing I've ever done, but because of what Jesus did for me. And I'm not participating in that just by being around it. Along the same lines, Paul preaches in Acts 17 in a pagan religious environment, the Areopagus, and says, people of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious, for as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, these are all altars to demons and false gods and probably demonic beings. And he says, I found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. So you are ignorant of the very thing you worship, and this is what I'm going to proclaim to you. So he's looking at all these altars. He finds one that says, this is an altar to a God we might not have thought of, because we want to make sure we hit everyone out there, right? We want to make sure we've got an altar to every God, including an unknown God. And he goes, I got the one you don't know about. So he's comfortable being in a place of pagan, demonic worship for the sake of the gospel. Then, this is going to blow some minds out there. He says, the God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth, and does not live in temples built by human hands. He is not served by human hands as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything. This is talking about God, right? But at the end, he says this, for in him, that's God, we live and move and have our being. And as some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. So he quotes to them one of their own writers, one of their own thinkers, which means at some point, Paul read one of their writers and one of their thinkers. So like there's a place for Christians to have as deep a knowledge as anybody of how all that stuff works. It's not like we can't go near it in terms of knowledge or proximity. It's that we don't want to participate in it. But for the sake of our witness, for the sake of telling people about Jesus, we can learn about it so that we can speak the language. Like I'm aware of Reiki and yoga, or not yoga, not all yoga is this way, but there is yoga that's very about like connecting with spirits, and that's part of what they're doing in the yoga session. Or tarot cards or mediums. Like I'm aware of all these things, I know how they work, and as I learned about those things and asked questions about them and talked to my friends who are doing that sort of thing, there's no risk to me in like knowing about them or learning about them or even being around them if I'm not participating in it.
Yeah, I guess it's probably your heart. Like, am I intending to learn about this because I need something else to help me, to heal me, to guide me? Or your purpose was specifically, I need to know about this so I can speak into it, and I can witness about it, about what I believe, about the gospel, what the Bible says. You're a pastor, you're trying to guide your sheep in a way, about how we should think about these things. But if we are so separated from society of today or the culture of today, and just it's not realistic and it's not biblical to separate yourself completely.
Yes. Yeah, there's another part where Paul says, hey, I wrote to you to not associate with sexually immoral people. And then he says, when I wrote that, I meant don't associate with sexually immoral people who claim to be Christians and don't even care. I follow Jesus, but I'm sleeping with whoever I want to sleep with. He's like, don't make that your crew. Don't make that the name of Jesus. And then he goes right on to say, I did not mean don't associate with people of the world who are living in sexual immorality. Because he goes, in that case, we'd have to leave this world because that's everybody. So we are not trying to create boundaries between us and our knowledge of this stuff or even our proximity with this stuff. We have to be in the culture, not participating, but in the culture so we can talk to people about Jesus, understanding their world, understanding why they're going to mediums and spiritists, and offering a different path.
An alternative. An alternative that we believe is true and good and the only answer. But we can't if we're never around people. If we're only around each other, if I only hang out with Vince every single day and that's the only person I get dinner with, that's the only person I speak to, I just how are we supposed to answer the call of Matthew 28? It just doesn't work. What
about Halloween?
Yeah, I guess what about
Harry Potter?
What about Harry Potter? What about Halloween? Enneagram? What about Enneagram? What about how do we feel about some of these?
Christmas even.
Christmas, yeah.
Pagan roots, supposedly. I think there's mixed views on the history of this. I'm not an expert at this at all, but apparently at some point there was like a Roman holiday to a Roman god, and then as Christianity took hold of the Roman Empire, they sort of co-opted that holiday and said, hey, this is no longer for this Roman god, this is for Jesus now. But then like the Christmas tree and some other things were still like remnants from that Roman god ceremony. Again, I think I've heard that, and then I think I've heard people say, oh no, that's not even really true, that isn't, who knows. But yeah, so this is where I think there is room to debate. And there is not a totally black and white formula. So let's go Enneagram first.
Yeah. What is the Enneagram?
The Enneagram is a personality test that essentially says there are these sort of like 9 different things that make people tick. Like some people are a peacemaker. They just want there to be peace. That's their highest goal. Some people are an achiever. They just want they just want to succeed, and that's their biggest goal. There's people who are like right and wrong oriented, and that's what they care about most. That at the end of the day, there's kind of like core motivations that are central to how people make decisions, how they think. And a lot of times they're connected to whatever you experienced as a kid. So if you experienced a very chaotic household as a child, sometimes you grow up and become a peacemaker. If you experienced a childhood where maybe you felt overlooked, you might grow up and become an achiever and want to succeed so that people praise you or, lift you up. So there's these 9 different sort of motivations. Now, nobody really knows where the Enneagram first came from. Supposedly it's like 2,000 years old. Some people think that it came out of some kind of occultic practice.
Yeah.
That like a demon told it to some people. Apparently, as far as I could research, that's not verified. That's not written down anywhere. It's so old that people aren't sure where it came from. So in that scenario, what I do as a Christian and as a pastor is say, okay, if we don't know where it came from, 1, what is it claiming today? And 2, is it helpful? So what is it claiming today? Today it is not claiming to have any kind of spiritual power. Today it is just claiming that there are people who really are motivated by different things. And oftentimes one of those things takes sort of center stage in that person's life. That idea, I do not perceive as a spiritual idea. It's not connected to any kind of spirituality. It's not claiming to have demonic power. It's not claiming to have any power. It's just claiming, hey, we think, or this framework thinks that this is how people tick. And so to me, we should not take it as from God, and we should not take it as like undebatable, and we should be willing to completely throw it out if it's not helpful. But it's just a framework. It's just like a way that you might say, is this true for people? Do some people find themselves being more motivated by one thing or another? And I think the answer to that question in general is probably true. Most people do have a few core motivations. And if this particular framework helps you think about what might motivate you, I think at the very least, it's not forbidden. It's something that we can look at and think about and say, is this helpful? And does it help us see ourselves clearer? And does it, I mean, it's central to the question too, is like, does it disagree with Scripture anywhere? Like a sort of comparison point would be the Myers-Briggs personality test. This is another personality test that's much more recent and was just created by looking at people, just observing people. And they said, hey, some people are way more big picture. Some people are way more detailed. Some people plan everything. Some people are spontaneous. That observation about people, just because there's no verse in the Bible that says some people are big picture and some people are details oriented, doesn't mean that that's not true. And that doesn't mean that it's wrong for us to notice that about people. It doesn't mean God was trying to hide that from us. It's just something we notice about people and about life. And that way of looking at people may be helpful in some situations, and it may not be helpful in some situations. All these personality tests, aside from any spirituality, there's always a dark side to them. You were talking about this. You want to talk about that? Because it's so true. What you said was so true.
I don't remember what I said.
You were like, a lot of these personality tests, they end up as an excuse for people to just steamroll other people.
Yeah, so sometimes my experience with personality tests like the Enneagram is it gives people an excuse to be like, yeah, that's just the way I'm wired. Sorry about my sin that continues to hurt our relationship because I just am an achiever, or I'm just like, and it's sometimes people use it to excuse behavior that is sinful, that hurts other people and hurts their relationships. And they explain it away as if like, that's just the way I'm wired.
Yes.
And the Bible I know the Bible definitely doesn't say, hey, just because you're wired we're all wired with sin.
100%.
And we're supposed to, the flesh, we're all going to have motivations. Like that's what the Enneagram believes as well, motivations. Fears, they say. What's your biggest fear? I'm afraid that people won't think highly of me. I don't know what it is. But, and so then they act in a certain way out of that fear, and it hurts others in the process sometimes. And we should, even though we should use if we do decide to use the Enneagram or another personality test, we should realize, oh, wow, I do tend to think that way because of just my history, just my life, my trauma, you might say, just the way I was formed or things that happened to me. And sometimes I'm a little over the top about this topic. And I'm working on it. I need to work on it. And that's something I'm still struggling with, and I'm sorry that came out, and I'm sorry that hurt you. I don't want to hurt you in that way.
I love that. That's just some good pastoring, Ben, on how we use personality tests in general. So thanks for saying that, and I think that's so true and so good. And someone might make the argument personality tests are so used so poorly that they're more hurtful than helpful. And I'm actually very comfortable with that argument. And sometimes I think that's true. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're from a demonic origin, right? We can discern, even something as basic as introverted versus extroverted. There's nothing in the Bible about being introverted or extroverted. There's nothing in the Bible about some people love to be alone, some people love to be with people, and get energized from being alone, get energized from being with people. But if we notice that people sometimes lean that way or the other, that's okay to notice. Now it's what we do with that. And we don't hold that to be indisputable truth. It's just an observation about life.
Yeah, I think a big thing for me is I sometimes, this happens with me and Sarah a lot. I'm pretty, I don't know what the word is, controlling, or I try to think I know all the answers to this is the best way to do something. And so I'll ask these very manipulative questions, which is terrible. Don't do that.
Public confession moment, right?
Don't do that. And I'll be like, do you really think you should do it this way? Obviously what I'm saying is, hey, I don't think we should do it this way. But it's super manipulative and just evil and wrong, and it comes up in a lot of the ways I sometimes catch myself interacting with people, and I have to call people. I called someone this week, a friend of mine, and I was like, hey, I'm sorry I said it that way this week, because once I said it, I realized that came out terribly wrong, and it came off as judgmental, and I really apologize for that, because I love you, and I think you're doing a great job, and I'm sorry.
That's great.
I don't know how that kind of comes in, but I think sometimes we want to make sure with any personality test, we're not explaining away behavior, explaining away sin. We still need to own up to our sin. We still need to confess our sin to one another so that you may be healed. I think it's James 5:16, and not only healed personally, but with that person we're in a relationship with.
I love that. That's a great point. These personality tests can be used for ill, and regardless of anything related to spirituality, we want to be careful how we use them. But so I think maybe this will tie a bow on the Enneagram thing. If there is a personality test that's here's your personality in the spirit world compared to all these different spirits. That's claiming to have a spiritual element to it. It's not from God. It's forbidden. But if that personality test is about just something about your preferences or your thoughts or your typical way you show up in a situation, then we use discernment. Is this helpful? Does it disagree with Scripture? Does it lead to negative things? But if it's not claiming to be spiritual, we don't need to have a fear that it might have some kind of spiritual thing connected to it and panic about that. Again, because we walk in the authority of Jesus. We have the Holy Spirit in us. We're not intentionally participating in anything spiritual. The thing is not claiming to be spiritual, and it's okay. That would be my take.
Yeah. I think that's good. I think we know the Spirit lives in us. The Spirit is going to give us wisdom.
Yeah.
And you have to trust that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think we should live in fear and anxiety over every single thing we participate in, because if it's really wrong, I think that example of me laying on the massage chair, I'm like, ooh, this is weird. You know, this is wrong.
Yeah.
I think I want to trust and that will happen. Not that I should be ignorant. You know, if there's something that is evil or wrong, and I feel that, like I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe I should look into this more.
Yeah.
You should probably look into it more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, don't purposely ignore a gut feeling if it causes your life to be harder.
Yeah.
Like, trust that feeling, because it could potentially be from the Spirit, and who's trying to give you wisdom to say, hey, look into this more, because actually I think it's for your best that you don't enter into that. So don't like flimsily go through life and be like, whatever happens.
Yeah.
Like trust your judgment.
Yeah. I think trust your judgment for sure. I think wisdom for sure. I think discernment for sure. And I think also a lot of people lean one way or another. Some people tend to be the constant obsessive. Is it bad? Is it wrong? I'm freaking out. And those people need to sort of correct oftentimes the other way.
Yes.
And the same thing on the other side. There are some people who are just like, yeah, whatever. I'll do it. You know, I'll do the thing, whatever the weird spiritual thing is, I'll do it. You don't want to be that side either.
Yeah. Is there a couple other ones we could click on real quick?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Probably the most.
Maybe Halloween? Is that what you were thinking? Or what were you thinking?
Let's do Halloween first.
Okay. So Halloween is maybe one that is even more gray than the Enneagram, right? And again, full disclosure, I grew up in a family that was lean, very conservative. Went to a church. None of my family is in this camp anymore. But when we were young, we went to a church that was about as conservative as you could be. Wouldn't do, I believe, for a while we didn't do Christmas trees because of the pagan root. We for sure didn't do Halloween, right? So I'm fully aware of that, and that's what I grew up with. My take with Halloween is, well, I'll just say what we're gonna do, and Joe's not here, so I think she's on. I think she's on the same page. I think that's how she would think about it too. But the parts of Halloween that are obviously creepy, I don't want our kids participating in that sort of thing, nor do I want to participate in that sort of things. Movies that are designed to make you feel fear. Costumes that are designed to make you feel fear. Things that are obviously supposed to look like demons.
Yes.
That feels too close to me. It feels too close for comfort. Now, there's room to debate on that. And like, I've seen scary movies. I'm not saying I would never watch any kind of scary movie, but especially with kids, I don't want to have this thing each year where I'm introducing fear into their lives and things that look like demons into their lives and that sort of thing. So that's one side.
Yes.
On the other side, there's a part of me that also says, for the sake of us introducing people to Jesus, I do think there's a little bit of it's okay to be present in the temple if you're not doing the temple things. So again, Paul's in the temple. He's looking at their altars. He's reading what the altars say. He's not participating in worship, but he is present with people in their world. So I think it is also, and this is controversial, and this is not, part of why we do this is so I can say some things here that I wouldn't feel comfortable saying from the pulpit. We don't even have a pulpit, but... And I can't ever fully, obviously, take off the pastor hat. But what I'm about to say, I wouldn't preach, thus saith the Lord. Okay, this is my discernment as best I can. And I could see it changing at some point in my life. But with the discernment I have for our own family, I would feel comfortable with us being present with the culture in ways that don't signal we are participating in something demonic to them. So I would feel comfortable with Lucy putting on a princess costume and walking through the neighborhood and letting people give her candy. That feels like an appropriate way to be present with people because, again, they don't, even if there are parts of it that are creepy, they don't see it as demonic. They don't think they're participating in anything with demons. Even though they're doing some things I wouldn't do, they don't see it as a demonic activity. And if what we're doing for sure isn't a demonic activity, aka wearing a princess costume, then I think it is a way to show up and be present with the culture in a way that just says, we love you and we are not separatists. And we're not going to say, is that meat sacrificed to an idol? Well, then I'm not going to eat it. You know, like Paul was literally like, they may see it as being sacrificed to an idol. You can still eat it because you're not eating it to worship an idol. There might be a tiny fraction of people that see Halloween as a demonic thing. But just because I'm eating some of the candy doesn't mean I am participating in demonic worship, nor am I signaling to them I'm participating in your demonic activity. So I'm not doing anything demonic. I'm not signaling that I'm okay with demonic things. I'm being present with people in the way that they normally do life.
Yeah, you're appropriating to the culture of the moment without, I don't know, believing in potentially weird roots of whatever.
Right.
I don't know how to say it. And like 1% of the population might be practicing it for that purpose. At this point.
And if I was around a group of people that said, hey, we want you to know we don't do Halloween in just the fun, get candy way. We do Halloween. Like we consult spirits and we call on demons and we do blood sacrifices.
Ouija boards.
I would not signal, I would not participate in that, nor would I signal that I'm okay with participating in that, nor would most non-Christians. You know what I mean? Like whatever it was, wherever it came from, the average person nowadays doesn't see it as a spiritual act in the way that they would a spiritist or a medium or a fortune teller.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
That's controversial, and we've had people leave the bridge because we do like a youth Halloween party, and I get that. And again, this is an area of debate where like when people say that's out of my comfort zone, I'm not like you're crazy. You know, I understand that. It's not where my personal convictions lie, but I understand that. And I don't judge that person who kind of falls in that camp. Anything you would know? Is that where you're at?
I'm
with
pretty
your kids?
I'm pretty sure I'm
If you're
there.
not, that's okay.
No,
if you're like, no.
I am definitely that way for Halloween.
Like Cam could trick or treat.
Cam could totally trick or treat.
Okay.
We dressed up as UPS drivers last year.
Yeah, there you go.
I think it was. And that was super fun.
Yeah.
And Sarah was a box.
Like a UPS delivery. I like it. I like it.
And it was super, super fun and cute. And we had a blast together. And we can hang out with other families. We can meet other families.
Yeah.
How often can you just go and not awkwardly go and meet another family on your block?
Yeah.
It almost can't happen today. Like
That's such a good point.
and it's kind of cool, even though I tend to be more introverted and want to spend my time alone. I know it's good for me to build more relationships and be in communities.
Yeah.
And there's lots of parts of my life where I'm in the culture of today, even though I don't agree with everything that's happening in that scene.
Yes.
And it doesn't, but also I'm probably the only saved person they know at the very same time.
Right.
And if I don't if I'm not in their life, who is it in their life?
Yeah.
And that's a drastic statement for something like Halloween. There's a lot of other context I'm talking about for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's just important. I think about it. I'm more on the fence about Christmas, specifically like Santa Claus.
Oh yeah, that's a
harder one for me. I don't know how I feel yet.
Yeah.
Because Cam's not old enough, so I don't really have to think about it
yet.
But I will have to think about it.
Can I say one more thing on the Halloween thing?
Sure.
The one other thing I was thinking, because I know there's a certain percentage of our viewers right now who are just reeling,
anxious, a little intense,
knowing that Lucy will dress up as a princess, and go house to house. They're like, I am panicking. Our church is going into the trenches. That every time we talk about this sort of thing, there's a certain group of people who panic, and I get that, But one other way to maybe think about it is to really zero in on the not just what might have been connected to it at one point, or how do some people see it, but what is it today? What is it today? What are people doing today? For example, if you were to find out, or someone was to find out, which this isn't probably really possible, but let's just say it was. If you were to find out that the sport of baseball came out of a pagan practice originally, that it came from some shaman who said that a demon told him to play baseball. It's a little weird. But you ask yourself, okay, but today when people play baseball, are they doing an occultic thing? I'm talking about the non-Christians.
Yeah.
Are they participating in something that they see as spiritual or demonic or connected to some kind of power? And if the answer is no, then I think in general we take it based on not just where it came from, not really where it came from, but what is it today? So that's kind of how I see Halloween, is wherever it came from, in general today, it is not seen as a spiritual thing by the people participating in it. And I don't think there are spiritual things happening by and large when people dress up and go get candy. But it is the closest one to something I wouldn't feel comfortable with, because there is weird fear things that some people do get into. And I don't think that part is wise. And so it's like that whole walking right on the line of not going into hopefully walking right on the line, not going too permissive, but also not going too legalistic. So,
maybe it's too far. I think about it like I can go into a bar and hang out and not. Yeah,
and there are people in that bar sinning.
And there are people in that bar sinning, and that is not. I'm not saying like, oh, get drunk.
Yes.
Go try to pick up people.
Yes. Yes. That's a great analogy.
But I also probably don't walk into a strip club. There's a difference there between a bar and a strip club.
Very much.
Because then I'm put in a position where I'm stuck. Like there's a line there in my opinion.
Yes. What am I actually doing in my soul, and what am I communicating? And if you are not participating in something demonic, and you're not communicating that you're participating in something demonic, I think that's a safe place to be. Same with the bar. If you're not getting drunk and you're not communicating, it's okay to get drunk. Just because there's people getting drunk around you doesn't mean you're condoning that or participating in that. The average person doing trick-or-treating isn't thinking, by doing this, I am supporting something spiritual. They don't see it that way, though they know there's probably a small fraction of people who do see it that way. So
anyways, that was a lot. But
long on Halloween.
And since we already talked about Halloween, just really quick, because it's Christmas and Easter, obviously our two biggest holidays of the year.
And we put up Christmas trees in the church.
Yeah, my and I don't know how to feel about this, but I have always been of the case, even though a lot of pastors I respect are like, you can pretend about Santa Claus.
The Santa thing?
You can pretend.
Let's talk about Santa.
You can pretend about Easter Bunny. Like, even though my opinion has been, I worry because it could pull away from the real purpose of what we talk about on those holidays. Jesus being born and coming as a human, even though he didn't have to live a life free of sin for us. And then Easter, obviously, when Jesus died and rose from the dead.
Yep.
And so my fear has always been, if we talk about Santa Claus, or if we talk about Easter Bunny and Easter egg hunts, whatever, it could pull away from what is the purpose of the holiday. So that's always been my fear with those.
Keep Christ at the center of Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you want to hear some thoughts?
Yeah, sure.
I'll give you some thoughts. So again, the sad thing is in the gray area. The funny thing with Santa is he's actually based on a Christian, as opposed to like something demonic in origin of
Who's
some
like on some high council of
Saint Nick. I don't know the details, but like some kind of Christian, within Catholicism at the time. So in that level, I think that you're obviously not on any sort of demonically rooted grounds. I think here's how I think about it for me and how we think about it for us. And hopefully there's no children watching that we're about to burst the bubble. But I don't want to have to say we made that up at any point. Whether that's 6 or 10 or, however. That's the part that bothers me far more than is Santa competing with Jesus. I don't want to have to say we made it up because I've seen it so many times where the kid says, did we make up Jesus too? Did we make up all the other,
the confusion?
The confusion.
Yes.
That is why we won't tell our kids that Santa is real. I have no problem with having Santas in the house.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're talking about Jesus all year round and not just on Christmas. And we might even pretend there's a Santa and say, let's pretend there's a Santa because it's funny and it's fun to picture a jolly dude bringing you presents down your chimney, which we don't have a chimney, but you get the idea. So I don't worry about it for the competition as much. Although if someone said, we wanted to just be 100% about Jesus, I'd say, fine. That's fine.
That's great.
That's great.
That's
great.
Yeah.
There's obviously nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
If you want to make it all about Jesus and if you want to make Easter only about the resurrection, fine. There's maybe wisdom in that. I wouldn't say it's sinful to include Santa or the Easter Bunny, but I do think, and this is again not biblical, I wouldn't say this from the pulpit, but I do think it is unwise to say there is a real live Santa and then have to roll it back.
Yeah, because if it's this big thing that they're celebrating every year that they trusted you on, it's and then you blow their brains at 10 years old. It's like, what else did you tell me that I shouldn't believe? That's
why?
I can see that. And if you are doing that with your kids, we're not saying
no shame.
You can't do that, but that is one fear of what you could break a little bit of trust between you and your kids. Potentially, maybe not.
I'm gonna do so many things to break trust with Lucy unintentionally. I'm gonna screw so many things up that I don't want to screw up. Anything I can avoid that I know I'm going to have to disappoint her, I want to avoid those.
Yeah. Maybe I don't want to have to apologize later.
Yeah.
Because of something I maybe knew I could have avoided.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to have to apologize when I freak out and go over the top about them dropping a plate on the ground and dropping it.
Yeah.
It was an obvious mistake.
Yeah.
They didn't mean to do it. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
What the heck, Cam? Are you kidding?
Yeah.
And then I know I'm going to have to apologize for that. I don't want to have to apologize for confusing them and breaking their trust and having some big moment of loss for them.
Yeah. That's how I think about it. Again, not to shame anyone.
Yeah.
And most people that grow up believing in Santa, that doesn't actually, as far as we can tell, produce this massive crisis of faith when they discover. But it's just one little pitfall I want to avoid. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Okay. I think that makes sense. I think,
maybe a couple other ones that we could hit quickly.
I think, the purpose, I think the last thing I'll say about that is, I heard a pastor say this, is not he said, what God creates, Satan distorts. So that's the only thing I would maybe just consider a little bit.
Yeah.
When it is the confusion of like, what is this day about? So I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or actually, I think it wasn't distort. It was what he used a C word. It was what God creates, Satan counterfeits, because it has to be alliteration because you're on stage as a pastor.
You're a pastor. You only have a couple tools. Alliteration's one of them.
But just something to keep in mind with anything. I think it could be. I think the biggest one for what we're talking about today is the good side of everything we're talking about is probably spiritual gifts. Like spiritual gifts are real and they're good, and we believe that.
Yeah.
That's off topic, kind of, but
no. That's a good point.
We are a church that believes in the power of the spiritual gifts. That we're all. Would you speak into that at all?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we believe we all have the Holy Spirit within us, and the Holy Spirit gives us gifts, and some of those. There's multiple lists in the Bible. We talked about this at one Sunday recently. We're actually talking about it again in a few weeks. So good timing. But yeah, the Holy Spirit doesn't just empower us to make good decisions, although he does do that. He doesn't just empower us to have wisdom, although he does do that, but he gives us certain gifts or abilities to serve Jesus. So there are some that are a little more supernatural, like prophecy, which would probably fall right into that counterfeit version, right? We believe in the spiritual gift of prophecy, where God can reveal things to Christians that they couldn't know without that outside intervention. I had a tough day a couple days ago, and like 2 or 3 different people texted me that day and said, I feel like you're having a tough day or a tough couple days, who I had not seen in a week.
That's awesome.
But they felt like God had given them a little bit of a nudge to reach out and just say, hey, I know I felt like maybe you're having a tough day. Could be a coincidence. Could be a little prophetic moment. That's sort of a prophecy light, right? Just a little bit of a nudge.
It's funny you say that. That keeps happening in my life group.
Wow.
Is where people are sharing their testimonies or sharing something that's going on, and like the person across the room is like, I had no idea that like other people struggled with that. Or I didn't know that was a part of your story.
Yeah.
That's exactly where the spot I'm in right now.
Yeah.
With whatever random life circumstance.
Yeah.
And it's I know it's not prophecy, but it's like, it's cool to see
God's timing and
putting people together.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's gifts of healing, like we talked about. We shared a story on Sunday of someone getting healed. We have, speaking in tongues is another thing, which is probably a subject for another podcast. But yeah, there's an actual power in the Holy Spirit that he gives to us, and that is sort of the opposite side of the battle.
Yeah. Okay. So 2 last things I want to touch on that maybe, because they're probably in the title, they might even be in the title of our podcast. The first one, because we just kind of went from the holidays and maybe a little bit of confusion that we have to just be a little tiny bit careful about. And then kind of to the last side of that spectrum is kind of pretend a little bit when we talk about how do we think about if you're watching a movie or reading a book that has fantasy, creativity, storytelling,
magic,
but it has magic in it.
Yeah,
like
Harry Potter. Right. Yeah.
Narnia, Lord of the Rings.
Narnia. Yeah. Right. So again, this is debatable, but there is a verse, Philippians 4:8-9. Where Paul says, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. So that verse to me says, part of what is baked in there is that we are supposed to be looking for the true, the noble, the right, the pure, the lovely. Like everything in the Bible is true. It's inspired by God. But that doesn't mean everything outside of the Bible, every book that's ever been written, every song that's ever been written is bad. So Paul is saying, look for what is true, noble, right in life. So, like, don't stop believing Who's that by? Journey?
Journey.
Don't stop believing. Right? That's not a Christian song, but that's a good song.
It's a good song.
And it's not a bad message.
Yeah.
I don't even really know what the message is, but I can get on board with that line.
I think keep going. It's
Don't
gonna
stop
be okay.
believing, keep going. So that song is not a Christian song, but I think it is as far as I can tell. Now, someone's going to tell me what the lyrics actually are. They're maybe like horrible message. Who knows? But that line, at least, don't stop believing, is a true, noble, and right line.
Mm-hmm.
Don't stop believing.
And it's not, even though it's not a worship song.
Even though it's not a worship song, right? So I think there is room. And again, we see Paul reading the philosophers of the day who weren't Christians, but he was still engaging in what they were doing. Now you could maybe say, well, he didn't enjoy a single second of it. Maybe, but he did quote it saying, I agree with this part. Like he quoted one of their non-Christian, non-Jewish philosophers and said, this line that this guy said is true. His worldview wasn't true, but this line is true. So there is true things that can come out of the non-Christian world. Tylenol is true. It's not demonic.
It's true. That is true.
Gets rid of the headache.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. There are good things that, because of God's grace, good things can come out of life that are not demonic. They're just good. Art that's not Christian. Whatever. So when I think about books in general, again, I ask that same question, what is it doing? If there is a book written with the goal to get you to try to do magic, fiction or nonfiction, I'm not down with that because we're not supposed to be doing that. But if there's a fantasy book that's clearly saying, this isn't real.
This is a made up place in a fictional world.
Yeah, and there's some things that might parallel life. Like, for example, The Chronicles of Narnia, Lord of the Rings. These are both books with magic written by Christians. Go ahead.
For the purpose of trying to have a gospel backbone to the whole message.
Yes. They weren't saying magic is real. They were saying this is a made up story, but it's a good story. Even that like hyper conservative church I grew up in, I remember the pastor saying, we're okay with Star Wars because it is good versus evil and the good wins.
Yes.
And I think, again, you got to ask, what do the creators intend in this thing? And what am I doing when I watch it? If your kid reads Harry Potter and says, I'm going to become a sorcerer, then maybe you pull the plug on book 2. Right? And say, this is not what the author intended, and this is not what is good for you.
Yes.
But I've never heard of that happening. What ends up happening is you go, wow, look at this moment of sacrifice where Ron goes, you're free to check the queen. You know what I'm talking about? Have you seen that meme?
No, I haven't, but it's funny when you say it.
It's like all these stories of sacrifice and love and compassion and like fighting against the powers of evil and fighting for the good.
Yeah.
It's not a Christian book, but it is a good book, a good message. All the values are right in line with Christianity, and it's not claiming that magic is real. It's just a made up story.
I think the best example is Avengers, to be honest. A character you would not expect. They're like, this is the only way this is going to work out. There's only one way.
Yeah.
That's what Doctor Strange says.
Yeah.
There's one way. That's it.
Yeah, he looked at all the
possibilities, all the ways to make this right, to fix this, and there was one way, and the one way was for one of the first Avengers that was highlighted to go through a spectrum of growth throughout his character development to give up his life.
Sacrifices his own life.
For many.
For many. Saves the entire world by sacrificing his life.
And I think that touches...
Sound familiar?
It touches our hearts.
Yeah.
Because I think we were created with the purpose to have a relationship with God. And so when we hear and read stories, watch or hear stories like that. I think part of it is connecting to this deep understanding in our hearts that there's really the truth of the gospel. In a way, it encourages me. It reminds me of the gospel, maybe because I know the gospel, but I'm curious if it starts to move in people's heart in the way, potentially.
Yes, 100%. What was the author intending? What am I doing? What is this doing to me? If it's true and noble and right and pure and loving and admirable, Paul says, think about those things. We are actually listening to the Chronicles of Narnia on audiobook right now.
Oh, that's cool.
And I've cried.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. And it's so, I mean, it actually is Christian. It's written by C.S. Lewis, who was a Christian.
Okay.
Also, a surprisingly large amount of very soft cuss words in the Chronicles of Narnia.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't know that. But it's funny when you read older books. I think The Hobbit even, maybe.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I'm like, this is like pretty much accepted in all of Christianity. And it's got a few very gentle cuss words in there, but they're in there. That's probably another topic for another podcast.
Okay, the last one we didn't touch on that is important. I think that people might want to know is yoga. I was thinking yoga. I come from a health background. I wish, and I've dealt with a lot of pain in my life. And I think if I was more flexible, maybe some of these issues I deal with maybe wouldn't happen. I wouldn't have as many muscle strains or whatever. Like that's science that is proven. You know, if you're more flexible, you're probably not going to have as many muscle strains and whatnot. And there's a use it or lose it philosophy. Like if you're not using your body in a certain way over time, you're not going to be able to get that back. And so use it now or you're going to lose it. That's what they say. That's their little phrase.
There's an inappropriate version of that phrase, I think, but we won't. If anyone got distracted, come right back on task.
And so one of the best things you can do for your health is mobility. Like what are you doing to make sure you're still mobile? And one big way people attack that is through yoga. But how should we think about yoga though? Because pretty sure it comes from some spiritual origins again.
Yeah. So the way I would think about this is, again, I should have systematized this a little more, but you got to ask yourself first, what is happening in the moment when people are doing yoga? There is yoga that is very much oriented toward connecting with a spiritual world. And that's not like hidden, that's like baked in. This is what we're doing. I would not feel comfortable participating in that because that to me is now we're in that camp where we're doing something, we're participating in something that is claiming to be spiritual. And I think that sends the wrong message to the people who are leading it. Even though maybe on some level we could say, I'm not thinking about those spirits, or that spiritual world, but it kind of sends the message, I'm participating in this to the people doing it. There is also yoga that you're just stretching your bod. And that is scientifically observable to just be good for your muscles, to stretch them. So to me, if people say, I'm going to go on a run to worship Satan, that doesn't mean Christians can't go on runs. Anything related to your physical body, you can do you can twist anything into an evil purpose. You can do anything to worship a demon or connect with the spiritual world. You can also just be stretching your body or going for a run because you're stretching your body or going for a run.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything you'd add to that or nuance to that?
I think just I don't know. I think if you're going to go into it, just do a little searching about it.
Like going to a class?
You're like, I want to start doing yoga because I want to become more flexible. Maybe you are like, okay, these are the things that potentially some yoga teachers who are maybe coming back from that more Hindu background about kind of where it originates. If they're doing these types of things and it's like, okay, I don't want to be a part of that type of yoga class.
Yeah.
There's some people will relabel it Pilates sometimes or other types of stretching where they're not doing chants,
Yes.
They're not doing emptying your mind.
Yep.
Like the Bible doesn't tell us to empty our mind. It tells us to
Renew
our minds, to fill our minds, to focus on what's good and true and valuable.
Yes.
And focus on God. And so like, if those are the things happening in your class, probably find a new class.
Totally.
Or find a new teacher.
Yes. Yes.
Because it might just be that random teacher. And because there is science to say we should be flexible. We should be mobile. That's a good thing to want to take care of your body.
Yes.
So if you go into class and you realize, shoot, this is weird, I don't want to keep doing that, there's grace for you.
Yeah.
It is totally okay.
Yeah, you're fine.
Go home. Just don't go to that teacher again.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
I think it's a great practical application, and I would totally agree.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay. I don't think there's anything else.
I think we hit it. I think we hit the spectrum. Mm-hmm. Looking at that list one more time. Yeah, we hit it, man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We hit it. Next time, not yoga, but yoga pants. Take it back to the whole modesty conversation.
Modesty.
Let's just have two dudes have the modesty conversation only about yoga pants. Take it back to the 90s.
Don't have a woman present.
That was such a hot button issue, was yoga pants for the long. Do you remember that?
90s? I was
maybe
born
not
in
90s.
96.
No, maybe not 90s. Yeah. But the entire American church had a debate about whether Christian women could wear yoga pants for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It was all you heard about. Mm-hmm. We could do a modesty one sometime.
Maybe.
That is another one that we're maybe not going to hit it on a Sunday morning, but a lot of people coming in, getting saved, maybe have just not even handles for like how to think about that as women and as men.
As men.
As both. So that could be another. We'll jump on the trend late. We'll do yoga pants episodes like 10 years.
Maybe, yeah. We'll see. But it is true because when we look at social media, when you go to a gym, what people are wearing out at events, is, I don't know how to say it. It's just what culture has told us is okay, maybe isn't always okay.
Yeah.
In the same way of everything we talked about today.
100%.
So just based on everything we talked about today, have discernment, be confident, because if you have placed your faith in Jesus, the Spirit does live inside of you.
Yeah.
And if you do catch yourself in a spot that you feel too uncomfortable to be in, that's okay. There's grace for you. If you were in a spot that you maybe now are like, I wish I wouldn't have done that, there's grace for you. That is totally okay.
Absolutely.
You can go to bed at night, and that's totally fine. There's a lot of these things. There is gray area. Some of these things we believe that there is not, and that's based on everything we are trying to decipher from the Bible, because the Bible does tell us we are in a spiritual battle, and there's good and there's evil, there's God and there's Satan, and we need to be careful. We do need to be watchful at the same time. So thank you for joining today. Thank you for watching. If this was helpful, please like, share, subscribe, send it to someone, talk about it in your life groups, whatever. As always, drop your questions below in the comments so we know what you guys thought. If you have more questions, we can reply to those comments, and we hope you guys will see us next week.
See you then.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, guys.